All right. So initially I had issues with my pointer, but now I guess it will be okay without me using slideshow. So I was actually saying that this is the first lecture on ethics and integrity and how we actually apply these concepts in healthcare. So before we go any further, we need to first understand what a profession is. So for you to become a professional, you must have undergone specialized training such that you acquire a certain level of qualification that is actually governed by a special code of ethics. So you can be a healthcare manager, you can be a public health professional, you can be a nurse, you can be a midwife, you can be a nutrition practitioner, you can be a lot of things. You can be all of that if you have gone to a recognized school and you have been trained on a specific curriculum, and you have gained specific competences required of your profession. And therefore, the futures of any profession include what we call expertise. Expertise, you have gained that knowledge, that the skills that you can actually demonstrate that you have actually undergone through particular training. And then there are also limitations or controls and or structures of practice of every profession. This is to say that if you are a nurse, there are things that you can do and there are things that you cannot do. If you're a general practitioner, there are things that you can do and you cannot do. You can be a specialist, there are things that you can do and things that you cannot do. So there are controls, okay? There are limitations within which you can actually practice within a professional field. So there are controls and there are structures that ensure that control is actually implemented. And then there is autonomy, okay? Professional autonomy. Like this is to say that as a professional who has been trained in a specific field, you can make independent decisions on practice or in practice, okay? Or on a particular situation, okay? That is what we mean by autonomy in practice. Every profession is regulated. Regulation is either by councils or professional bodies. We can call them councils or professional bodies. And then as a professional, you have an obligation to protect the profession, protect the society, and also protect patients. Okay? So those are the futures of any profession. So now when we come to professional ethics, we are basically look at the moral principles and values that actually guide your conduct and behavior as a health professional, okay? The decisions that you make in practice follow certain principles and values, okay? So in this module, therefore, you will learn about these values, you will learn about these principles, okay? So how do you actually make decisions in a healthcare setting? These are things of professional ethics. Usually the underlying principle is that you make the decision in the best interest of the patients and the public. Therefore, if we talk about the word professionalism in health settings, we are basically referring to placing the interests of the clients above those of the health professional. It's basically about maintaining certain competencies, integrity, honesty, in matters related to health, okay, without having issues of, let us say, conflict of interest, let us say dishonesty, let us say not demonstrating ethical behavior. So when we talk about professionalism, that's what we look at. So ethics as a term is basically related to what are those principles and virtues that govern the character and conduct of a specific group of individuals, or let us say professionals. So you can have what you call legal ethics, engineering ethics, you can have nursing ethics, you can have medical ethics, you can have bioethics, you can have a variety, okay? So every profession actually has, every profession, they have their own ethical principles and guidelines that they follow. But of course, some of them are cross-cutting across all fields. So ethics is basically is about deciding on what is wrong and what is right. So ethics is the consideration of what is wrong and what is right. So we can say that we have three types of ethics. Okay, descriptive ethics, we have normative ethics, we have meta ethics. So let's look at each of these. So descriptive ethics basically refers to studying how individuals or cultures perceive and describe what is right and what is wrong based on their values, beliefs, and cultural norms. We are not interested in understanding why they perceive something, whether it is wrong or right. We are basically interested in knowing how they perceive things, how they perceive the right things, and how they perceive the wrong things. The why part is not any of our interests, okay, or the processes for which they arrive at what is wrong or what is right is none of our interest. We are basically interested in knowing how they perceive what is right or what is wrong based on their values, beliefs, and cultural norms. So basically, the issues here that you can look at is that, one, there is diversity in ethical perspectives. Like there is no universality. This is to say that what is right in one group of people may not be what is right in the other group of people. Okay, so there is diversity. That is one. Two, there is what we call cultural relativism. Okay, this is to say is that depending on the culture that you're actually talking about, what is wrong may be what is wrong. What is wrong in one culture may be what is wrong or what is right in the other. Okay, so there is no static. Being wrong or right is not static, or is not something that is constant. It keeps evolving from one culture to the other. But also, what is right or what is wrong is basically an underlying factor in our social settings. Okay, so when we're looking at descriptive ethics, we are looking at the sociological and the anthropological issues as they relate to morality. How society and their cultures actually shape what is morally right and what is morally wrong. Okay, so this is to say that depending on the culture that you're in, they can perceive issues differently. And that is why in other places, polygamy is not accepted. But in our context, polygamy is the norm. Is something that is actually normal. Good. Okay. The same two issues to do with abortion. Abortion can be considered something fine in other places, but cannot be considered something right in other places. And then we look at the normative ethics. Now, this is the normative ethics actually provide guidelines or principles for how individuals or societies need to behave in order to make ethical decisions. Okay? This actually relies a lot on what we call moral reasoning. Is that for you to arrive at what is wrong or what is right, there should be either theories, models, frameworks, principles, or any other decision-making processes that you have to follow in order to arrive at what is right or what is wrong. Okay? That is what we call normative ethics. Then we move to meta-ethics. This one actually concerns with the origin and nature of ethical concepts. Okay? We want to understand how people arrived at what is wrong and what is right. Okay? What are the concepts here? The concepts here are that one, you can have what you call ethical realism, which is basically a principle that there is always what is right and what is wrong, and there is no negotiation about it. It is supposed to be what it is. Okay? But then other people are saying what is right or what is wrong is not absolute. It is actually relative. Okay? It can actually vary. So the opposite of ethical realism is moral relativism. Okay? And then we have what you call a concept called moral intuitionism. Okay? This is to say that humans are inherently aware of what is right and what is wrong. Okay? But then the other principle is that you can you can question moral skepticism, which is that you can question what is right and what is wrong. You should always ask yourself, why are you considering something to be right and the other to be something wrong? Okay, but you can also look at the form of language used in describing ethical terms as one of the approaches of meta-ethics. So meta-ethics, like I've just said, it just looks at how people arrive at certain ethical concepts. So we look at the nature and the origin. How did they arrive at the fact that certain ethical principles should be upheld and others should not be? That is meta-ethics. So we have been talking about morality, but what is it? What the community or what a given society sanctions as either right or wrong. Okay, a society can agree to assign a given act as either being right and therefore acceptable, or not being right and therefore not acceptable. Okay, for example, morality can be looked at in a way that when individuals sacrifice their short-term interest for the benefit of the society in general, then that is something that you can say that is morally upright. Okay, that is morally good. Okay, so how people determine whether something is good or something is bad, that is not actually static or is not actually fixed. This is to say that what is actually considered right or wrong may not be the same across different societies and cultures. But of course, we still use morals to determine what is expected of individuals in a given society. Okay, this relates to many things. Relates to engagement in sexual behavior, relates to the dress code, relates to many other aspects. Okay, that is to do with morality. So there is a kind of cross-section between morals and ethics. You said ethics basically concerns about what is right and what is wrong, but mainly based on rules. Mainly based on rules, but still they may vary. Whereas morals, what someone considers to be right or wrong based on their own personal perspective. And mainly morals are actually not rigid as ethical issues, but both of them relate to doing the right or the wrong thing. So when you talk about the code of ethics, we are basically trying to outline the basic rules or principles that you should follow in doing what is good and avoiding what is actually bad. Okay, so if you join an organization, you are usually given what you call a code of conduct, which basically gives you the rules and regulations concerning your behavior within a particular organization. So as a professional, you should uphold organizational code of conduct and then respect the ethical the code of conduct. But generally, as a professional, you should respect human beings regardless of their status. You should demonstrate competence, integrity, and you should always be a person who has a serving mindset, a person who takes responsibility and always acts in a fair way. So for you to have all those aspects, you have what you call self-regulation. As a person, what ethical principles, what moral principles are you upholding? As a profession, as a person who belongs to a particular profession, there are things that you are supposed to uphold. So looking at professionalism, you should have these two things actually within you. As a person, like I said, you should be committed to service, should be very competent. You should not be a person who is dishonest. You should respect ethical principles, autonomous. You should work with individuals. You should regulate yourself in many aspects, either in using resources, either in interacting with people, not taking advantage of individuals, and a lot of other things. But as a person who belongs to an organization or to a profession, you should be a person who protects the image of the profession by doing good. Okay, either in allocation of resources, either in ensuring equity, ensuring justice, playing a part in setting the guidelines for practice in a given profession, conducting research, showing, fostering integrity, and a lot of other aspects. So therefore, professional ethics is actually very important. If you uphold them, you ensure that you're not going to exploit patients, and therefore you are going actually to provide quality care to patients, and patients will be safe in your hands. They will trust what you're doing, and they have confidence in the profession that you're actually exercising or practicing. It basically protects the image and integrity, and also ensures that decisions are done in the right way. The right ethical principles are followed in decision making. Often, this is associated with allocation of resources. So it is very, very, very key. So what are the principles that guide practice? Basically, we usually talk about four principles of professional ethics. One is autonomy, is that respecting the rights of the patient to make their own decisions. The next one is beneficency, is that you should always do the best the best the patient. You should do something that promotes the well-being of the patient. You should not do something that will harm the patient and minimize any risks to them. And then justice, which is basically that you should share resources fairly and equitably. We shall look at these principles in our next session after this. We have a lot of things that guide professional ethics. We looked at one, which is the code of ethics. These are the guidelines developed by professional organizations that guide the practice of health professionals. So we have the code of ethics for nurses, for doctors, for clinical officers, and the rest. And then we also have regulations that should actually be followed. Okay, these are usually legal and regulatory. Okay, so the nurses have their own limits of practice. Midwives have their own limits of practice based on the legal and regulatory frameworks. And then we have what you call ethical decision-making models, which we shall also look at. What do you have to follow in analyzing ethical dilemmas and coming up with the ethical decisions? How do you do that? So basically, what we have looked at is that professional ethics are concerned with how professionals conduct themselves and what they have to use in order to make decisions about care that they render to the patients. Usually, we follow the principles of autonomy, beneficency, non-malfeasance, and ethics, and justice in professional ethics, as really applied in health care ethics. But we also have frameworks or tools that enable the practice of the ethical practice of any profession in any field. So that is our first presentation.